I'm going to talk about some oil pastel techniques today. So you can see I have a little kit of multiple colors of oil pastel. I've also got a black and a white that didn't come in my kit. If you don't have these, it's okay. I'm just going to show you some techniques on using those. And I've also got myself a blending tool or a tortillon. If you don't have that, that is fine, but I'm just going to show you some different techniques you can use with that. But we're also going to do some blending with an old eraser. So if you have an eraser that you don't care about, you can use that. I also have myself a scratching tool. This is a chopstick from a to-go order that I no longer needed. So if you can find some sort of tool like that. All right, I'm going to start out by talking to you about just oil pastels. Now, you might have a nice new kit where your pastels are nice and together and there's paper around it. And you can start by just applying straight on with going up and down, just applying some oil pastel on your paper. And when you put light pressure on, you'll see the white paper come through. If you put a little harder pressure on that oil pastel, you will see that you can get kind of more of a waxy look and it's more of a solid color. Sometimes you also might break your oil pastels, and it's okay if you peel that paper back or you take that paper off. The paper's really so that you don't get your hands, don't get all oily. But another way that you can add oil pastel is by the side of the pastel. So when you have these tiny little pieces, save onto those, because it's a great way to really get some color applied onto your paper. Now, this is in our blending region because I'm going to show you that if I were to take my light part and I just use my finger, whoops, that doesn't have, make sure I don't have purple on it, and I can use that to just kind of blend my oil pastel so that it actually has more of a solid color like when I just had higher pressure. But you can see it's a little bit more see-through and a little bit not so thick of the oil pastel. I forgot to tell you too, a paper towel is another great tool for blending. So you can see my side here. I can just use this to really kind of blend my oil pastel. So if you have a paper towel, that's a great tool. You can really get like bend your paper towel into tiny little things so that you get, you can get your blending so it's small little pieces. So maybe you don't want to blend that whole square, but you want to blend maybe the edge of your square. So you can use a small bit of your paper towel. Another tool is using this blending tool here. So if I use the side of this, it's a great way to get a good blend using this tortillon. The thing is, these do get dirty with your oil pastel. So if you do have one of these, you'll also want some sandpaper because that's how you can clean this guy off and have a brand new tortillon ready to go for your next color, like that. And another one is using an old eraser. So old because you're going to get your oil pastel all over it, but that's a great way to actually use and pull on your oil pastel and get some texture with that pulling technique. So you can see there's multiple ways to use your blending. You can use your fingers, you can use an eraser, a fancy dancy tortillon, or just your good old-fashioned paper towel. Your paper towel is also a really nice tool to have for if I wanted to add white. You can see that I have really dirty on my oil pastel. So I can just go ahead and use my paper towel to make my white nice and clean. Which brings me to our next piece, which is color mixing. The other thing is I like to have a brush handy so that I can get some of those little bits off of my paper. All right, so color mixing, just like we did in our colored pencil tutorial, we used color mixing as a way to expand the color palette that maybe you are given in this one little kit. So you can always make new colors by just using that to do some overlapping of colors. So you can always get a different variety and a different section of colors. So go ahead and mix all your different colors and see what new colors you can get. Same thing with color pencil, how we learned I put orange under there first. What happens if I put blue down and then orange? Does it make a difference? So you can see like that this kind of gives a different effect than that one. And it's kind of fun to have like the orange shining through on the edges, depending on what you're doing. So you can see a little orange coming out through. Sometimes it's fun. Or where this one, if I put the orange down and then the blue over, the blue's the one that's shining over the top. Just brush off those little scumbles. And I'm ready to do a little bit more color mixing. So I was really using heavy pressure here for that color mixing, but you can also use some light pressure. So if I put some light pressure green down and then I put some light pressure the opposite way of yellow, that's a great way to get a nice light green, which is different than this light green that I have in my kit. So you can see how you can really create different variety than maybe what you have in your kit. And going one way and then the other really helps with that blending. Let's do my light green, very light layer with a light red over the top. You can see that I can get kind of almost a brown color that maybe I don't, again, have in my kit. And maybe I need a little bit more green and I go right back over with it. So you can really get that layered effect of maybe the color that you're looking for. So test out some of your colors in your kit and get a few down and check that out. That moves us on into our tints and shades. And our tints and shades are really fun because when you have a tint of a color, now you can see that I've got my oil pastel is dirty, so I'm not going to break it. I'm going to clean it off. But I just kind of got a dirty orange down on that side, but then a regular orange on this side. And I can, for a tint, which is adding white, I can make a nice color of that orange be a tint. And then with my shade, now shade, when you have a black, you don't want too much. You're just going to put a light layer down. And that's where with shading, you really want to get into the blending. So using your blending, either your tortillon or your paper towel. And you can really get like a shaded orange. So this is, tints and shades are great for highlights and dark. So if I wanted to create something like a, like let's say a sphere, where I wanted my light up top and my darkness down here, maybe I put a little bit of the black in and then cleaning off my white, I bring in my highlights at the top, do my overlapping and come down, really get that to be the white. And then maybe I use some blending to get that dark in. So, you know, creating shapes that have your light and your dark in them by using the tint and the shade. You can also use your finger for blending. And you can see, like, the thing about oil pastels is sometimes it's hard to get that line correct, but that's what I like about oil pastels is I can actually, I'm going to tear this back a little bit more on this one. I can go back in to this circle and maybe I pick a completely opposite color and I can color right to the edge of that and really get that circle back by going right up to the edge of that piece. So you can see that you're almost like going right up as close as you can to that. And then you can see that you can get that looking a little better. Maybe I put a little black in here for some shadow with my green. And voila, I got myself a sphere in the making. And then instead of using my hands, I'll just kind of take it off with the brush because my hands can sometimes blur that. So you can see that you can get some good lights and darks by just using tints and shades. So it's a great way to add some volume and depth to your drawings. All right. So now let's get into, this one is one of my favorites, etching. There's multiple ways you can do etching. You can add some, being careful with Miss Lasdin and her breaking of pastels. You can add a good amount of oil pastel down on your paper, and then you can just use a tool and scrape back in with some texture, some line, even like little drawings if you wanted. You can, do thick lines, thin lines with your tool. You can also layer one color on the bottom, which you may have done this in your childhood with crayons, and then layer another color over the top, being cautious not to do being careful with the blending. And then I can carve in, and you'll see that it's not necessarily the white, it's the color underneath. That might have blended too much. Let's try the black over the top. Sometimes black works the best for the over the top. And yeah, there you go. So the black works a little better for that etching look of layering the colors. You'll have to just practice which looks best. All right, and another, I'm just gonna get rid of some of these little guys. Another one is actually carving right into your paper. So putting some texture right down into your paper. And this is good if you want to do hair, like if you wanted to do some hair, it's good to just kind of do your hair like so. And then what you're doing is you're just adding some color over the top of that. And what's nice about that is it gives you that white highlight underneath. And let's say this is maybe even trying to get some hair color in there and blending different colors together. So you can see that you get kind of you can get a nice etching of the different colors. And you can blend right over the top, but trying to really keep that texture showing through. So it's a great way to get texture in your artwork. All right, scribbling, another real fun one, is really just using the technique of scribbling, which is sometimes you've probably done this before, and you're just building up layers by using a scribbling technique. Really kind of play around with scribbling and use multiple colors. This is a great way to also get some great blending of colors. So if you really use colors maybe that you wouldn't think together, and see how that just comes to life by using the idea of scribbling, and how this could actually, really creates depth in your work. So really with all of those different layers of colors in there, really creates a depth in your artwork. So just give that a try of just multiple colors going back and forth and scribbling. And you can see it creates an awesome texture. Boom. All right, let's get rid of these little buggers. Those things, sometimes you blend them on your paper and then they're all over your paper, like here. So that's why I like to get rid of them. Stippling. Stippling I really like for doing things like grass or a field or even trees, like when you have the leaves in a tree. So if you get like a variety of colors for this, like I'm going to get my light green, my dark green, and some yellow. I'm just going to peel them off so they're ready to go. So stippling is just tiny little dots. If you like impressionist work, impression painting, this is a way to kind of copy an art piece from that century. And instead of using paint, you can use oil pastel. So it's a great way to kind of replicate some artwork. So I put some dots of that light green. Now I can come in with my dark green and then some yellow. Okay, my video kind of stopped on me, my last one, but you can see that I did some grays, some whites, some blacks for that grassy look. And then I went on and did some, instead of dots, I did some texture by using line work. And this is a great way to get fur. So if you're looking to do some texture with fur or hair, this is a great way to just do small line work between your different colors. And you can go right over the top and blend right with that line work. And you can also go back and use your etching in this too, is use some of your carving away to really kind of get that quality of your fur. So that is your stippling. Now I'm going to go into how to use an underpainting. So this is acrylic paint and this is watercolor up here that I have dried on my paper. And the great thing about an underpainting is it, for one, you can get real vibrancy, which we did with using black paper at one point. You can get a very different look by using, colors over the top by having an underpainting. They really kind of pop out in a very different way. And it's a great way that if you wanted to just block out the underpainting of a piece, you could really, you really can get a fun depth effect. So again, like if I went and I started to do and wanted to make this a grassy field, and having that red in the background really kind of allows it to pop differently than maybe just having this on the white paper. So it really kind of creates a very different effect. Puts a little texture in your work, and you can kind of really kind of get a nice effect of really having that layered effect. So if you have some acrylic paint, you can paint a piece of paper and give that a try and test that out. And another one too is I could go back in and scratch back in. So using red and green, kind of could really create dynamic, opposite of the color wheel, really dynamic work. Over in here, you can see that I have like a gradient here. So I could go and use that, similar with my oil pastel. If I wanted to have like a background, I can just put some right over the top. And, that blue really just kind of shines through and creates a different technique. I can use maybe some blending to kind of create the similar gradient and have, that blue shining right through. Another little technique too is kind of the idea of tie-dye. So having a background, get my yellow center with a little bit of green. So using opposite colors of that orange. Maybe get some pink in there and some blue. And this is where I can bring in my eraser and going from the center, really work my way around and out, and you get this kind of tie-dye effect. So it's really nice to have that background color popping through versus white paper. You could do it with white paper too, but I think I like the watercolor underneath for this, and you get this really awesome effect that you can do like that. So great way to kind of get textures, variety of things going on. So you can see that I did a little fox here. So you can see that I really worked with the texture of really getting the stippling in with the fur, doing really darks around the eye, and then carving away with my tool, maybe where I needed to bring back in some line work and into my piece. So you can see I scratched back out, but check it out that like there's some reds in that fur, there's some green. So I didn't just use one color. So really push yourself when you're using oil pastels to maybe use colors underneath your layers that are different than maybe you're used to. All right, well, have some fun and play around with your oil pastels. You can see I've got a whole bunch of stuff here with the underpainting too, so doing some fun stuff like that. So really give it a shot, give it a try, see what different pieces you can make. Get inspired. So you can make a final piece or you can just do your practice sheet. Whatever you do, make sure to photograph and hand it in at the end of class. Have fun.